Our final story, our the dumbest fucking thing. The dumbest fucking thing possible. Texas Republicans focus on a rebrand of New York strip steak to Texas strip steak amid measles outbreak. As state grapples with the worst measles outbreak in decades, Patrick hones in on a resolution to quote better market Texas beef. Buddy, you need to go to the ranch, the Dr. Phil ranch. You need to get the fuck up out of politics. Why are you so interested in this? Republicans are so fucking stupid in the office they hold because they never focus on anything meaningful. They either focus on bad shit or they focus on dumb shit. And Dan Patrick is focused on some dumb shit right now. While Texas grapples with its worst measles outbreak in decades, I believe like someone died from this as well. Its Republican lieutenant governor has moved for the state's restaurants and groceries to change the name of the New York strip steak to the Texas strip in what he inevitably hopes is a blow to liberals. I think The Guardian is low key my favorite news outlet right now. In what he inevitably hopes is a blow to liberals. Dan Patrick announced on Friday on social media that he intended to go to Texas's Senate and work with lawmakers to pass a resolution favoring the switch, which would not carry the force of law, but nonetheless would amount to a substantial statement of legislative support. Patrick's announcement made it a point to allude to the Gulf of America, which Trump ordered to be renamed to the Gulf. Oh, I'm sorry. To the Gulf of Mexico, which Trump ordered to be renamed to the Gulf of America in an executive order early in his second U.S. presidency, and perhaps anticipating reproval for his choice to focus at least some of his attention on renaming meat after a child in his state became the first person in the U.S. to die from measles in a decade. Patrick's statement said, quote, "In a world filled with serious issues that address every day at the Texas Capitol, this simple resolution will help better market Texas beef." We are so unserious, dude. We are such an unserious nation. There this is going to put the dude, this Trump presidency is going to put the Onion out of business. What are they going to say? Like what satire are they going to write? You cannot print satire better than this. He's self-aware of all of the issues plaguing his state, like how these proposed cuts to Medicaid would take even more people off of Medicaid in his state. It's already like 4 million Texans are on Medicaid. More are going to be coming off after like 2 million came off in November of 2024. Some users of the platform where Patrick touted his proposed Texas strip resolution were not deterred from verbally assailing him over it. Quote, "Glad to see you're focused on the crucial issues plaguing your constituents," one wrote sarcastically. "Very important cause here and not at all ridiculous or a waste of time." It is worth noting that you can rename this like whatever the fuck you want. A lot of grocery stores, at least locally, source their products locally. Like I live in New York, and if I go to the supermarket, if I go to Whole Foods or whatever, there's produce from, New York, from Maine, the apples from New York, undefeated. And all of the meats, or a majority of the meats, are sourced locally, unless it's like lamb or something. You can only get it in Australia or whatever. Another wrote that if Texas doesn't strive to reduce property taxes, many Texans will lose their own Texas strip of land. Does Texas have crazy property taxes like that? Let me know. I mean, I guess, yeah, I don't know. Patrick's proposal takes aim at the New York strip as labeled by the Delmonico's restaurant chain, which started in Manhattan in the 1800s and served the beef cut alongside mashed potatoes as its signature dish. He said that he had recently met with Texas's Association of Cattle Feeders and Cattle Raisers, and he bristled when some of them told him that their favorite cut of meat was the New York strip. The New York strip is a delicious cut of steak. Why would you be surprised by that? It is like objectively one of the best cuts that you could get. Quote, New York has mostly dairy cows, Patrick wrote in his announcement, which noted that Texas leads the U.S. with 12.2 million head of cattle. Quote, just because a New York restaurant named Texas Beef a New York Strip in the 19th century doesn't mean we need to keep doing that. Does this guy know where that beef was sourced from? Is he able to track it in 2024, 2025, where this specific cut of meat came from back in the 1800s? It could have come from New York, but what if it didn't? What if it came from North Carolina? Or what if it came from Iowa? Or whatever fucking state was a state back then? Like, this is so fucking silly. Now, Patrick said Texas would ask the state's restaurants and grocery stores to quote change the name of this strip of meat the next time they reprint their menus. Quote, we want this to catch on across the country and around the globe, said Patrick, who's been Texas lieutenant governor since 2015. Liberal New York shouldn't get the credit for our hardworking ranchers. I'm getting secondhand embarrassment from this. Quote, we promote the Texas brand on everything made or grown in Texas because it fits our economy and jobs. Don't they have a power grid that's like 300 years old? They're fucking they lose electricity regularly. And this guy is focused on a New York strip. Patrick's announcement came on the same day that his state's health officials reported measles cases in more than 145 people in Texas. Days earlier, a school-aged child contracted measles and died after not being given a vaccine providing immunization against the highly contagious but preventable disease. Yeah, really cool how for like 20 years, there were only a couple dozen cases of measles in the United States. Like all throughout the 2000s, it's like 36 cases, 48 cases, 55 cases, and now measles is back, baby. The outbreak is Texas's largest in about 30 years, and the child's death was the first fatality from measles in the U.S. since 2015. By Sunday, the situation had deteriorated to the point that Trump appointed U.S. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy, who for years has sown doubt about vaccine safety and efficacy, published an opinion column on Republican-friendly Fox News that read, vaccines not only protect individual children from measles, but also contribute to community immunity, protecting those who are unable to be vaccinated due to medical reasons. I, I'm stunned, bro. I'm literally at a loss for words. And you guys can see on the video. This is very clearly The Guardian. This is very clearly a reputable media outlet. Texas's measles epidemic is not the first contagious disease outbreak amid which Patrick has drawn political criticism from some. He managed to do the same in the spring of 2020 when he argued that, quote, lots of grandparents in the U.S. would rather die than risk hurting the economy with activity restrictions meant to slow down the spread of the COVID-19 pandemic. Was Texas one of the states that just at a point stopped tallying like COVID infections and deaths? Oh my god, like this guy is a literal menace. He's a he's a bona fide freak, dude. Bona fide freak. Now let's talk about Medicaid in Texas because this dude has so much shit to worry about. And again, he's choosing to fixate on meat. Bro, imagine fixating on a slab of beef when your constituents are likely to lose Medicaid coverage. This article, courtesy of Salud America, why millions of Texans are losing Medicaid coverage. 2 million Texans lost their Medicaid health insurance coverage in part due to state errors after federal funding to Texas ended after the COVID-19 pandemic, according to a recent article from ProPublica and the Texas Tribune. Many who feel, quote, wrongly removed are struggling to regain their coverage. Quote, Texas's zealousness in removing people from Medicaid was a choice that contradicted federal guidelines from the start. That decision was devastating in Texas, which already insures a smaller percentage of its population through Medicaid than almost any other state and is one of the 10 that never expanded eligibility after the passage of the Affordable Care Act. Really cool for Texas to just deny its citizens healthcare coverage, potentially. This is what? the second most populated state in the country behind California. And they're like, actually, no, we want to restrict Medicaid coverage to as many people as possible. Why is Medicaid important? During COVID-19, the number of people receiving Medicaid grew to 6 million in Texas, a rise of about 50%. Medicaid offers health coverage to children, parents, pregnant people, elderly folks with certain incomes, and people with disabilities. Medicaid is a crucial coverage option for Latinos who are less likely to obtain private health insurance from their employers, which is the most common form of health coverage in the United States. Racial ethnic minorities make up about 60% of Medicaid enrollment. Why are people losing Medicaid coverage? However, studies show that Latino and Black Americans are twice as likely than white Americans to lose Medicaid coverage due to process-related issues, according to a Salud America resource. This is apparent in Texas following the pandemic, according to the article from ProPublica and the Texas Tribune. Quote, nearly 1.4 million of those who lost coverage were disenrolled for bureaucratic reasons like failing to return a form or completing one incorrectly, not because they weren't eligible. This happened all across the country, by the way. I believe more prominently in red states, but it was a whole fucking mess once COVID-19 protections ended, which was really fucking stupid. Like, just keep people on Medicaid. Who cares? For Latinos and people of color, the loss of coverage adds to the other barriers that they face in getting healthcare, such as language and transportation to medical appointments. A lot of jobs that these folks work, that low income people work, that minorities work, just don't extend health insurance to them. Whether it's because they simply don't want to, or because they don't work enough hours, quote unquote, or some bullshit like that. The article shed light on families impacted. For example, a boy with a rare heart condition lost Medicaid coverage because his parents didn't sign a form that even the family's caseworker was unaware the family needed to complete. Due to this, the boy's parents couldn't afford his $6,000 monthly pulmonary hypertension medication or pay for an ultrasound that would determine whether he could survive without the drugs. If we were a functioning country, the president would do to health insurance CEOs what Xi Jinping did to Jack Ma. Beyond that, if we were a functioning country, this would not even be a discussion. We would have single-payer healthcare. It wouldn't cost $6,000 for this kid to get his medicine because the government would negotiate drug prices and it would be like $1, and then he'd just be able to go to the ER or to the hospital and get these necessary testing. This is so fucking dystopian, the country that we live in. The impact of losing Medicaid coverage. In April 2023, federal protections regarding coverage were lifted. In preparation, federal officials advised states not to renew more than 11% of their caseloads each month, cautioning that moving more quickly could overwhelm the systems and lead to wrongful removal of eligible people. Since this was only a recommendation, Texas began the reviewing process for about 1 million cases, 17% of the caseload. Again, this is an instance where you need more government employees, which would make this process more efficient. The article also highlights that Texas's median processing time for Medicaid applications is almost 3 months. Quote, Texas also decided against the more vigorous use of automatic renewals urged by the federal government, forcing nearly everyone to resubmit documents proving they qualified. Nearly 1.4 million of those who lost coverage were disenrolled for bureaucratic reasons like failing to return a form. Not only have these changes impacted families, but also the clinics and healthcare workers providing the care. Quote, across the state, some safety net clinics reported a 30% decrease in revenue due to the unwinding. Similarly, some healthcare centers have laid off staff along with other cuts. Quote, I've had centers that are unfortunately having to cut back certain services or extended hours like behavioral health services, dental services, just because they can't afford to continue to offer that care, said Jana Eubank, head of the Texas Association of Community Health Centers. Additionally, some families that have lost Medicare coverage are also waiting more than a month for food assistance due to Texas having the same eligibility system for both processes. Quote, San Antonio Food Bank CEO Eric Cooper said the nonprofit was crushed by demand this summer when families faced sudden medical bills, kids were out of school, and the state had a backlog of more than 277,000 food stamp applications. All of these ills plaguing his state. And Dan Patrick, no, not Dan Patrick. What the fuck is his name? Tim Patrick. Tim Patrick. No, it is Dan Patrick. I thought Dan Patrick. Fuck it. I thought Dan Patrick was also a sports commentator, and this guy is focusing on meat. We are so cooked. Just start over. Start the country over from scratch. Take the Constitution, modernize it, and then just do whatever you can to unwind this current political system that we're in.